and welcome to the Traveling Introvert. Today I want to talk about going from having an idea about something to first iteration. I was doing some virtual co-working the other day, and I'd set a goal for myself to create a workbook. And this virtual co-working session was a 4-hour session. It's something I do on a regular basis with a select team. And I'd set it as my overall goal. Normally during the 4-hour session, you can have a base goal and a stretch goal. And I thought this particular workbook was going to take me the whole 4 hours, so I set it as my base goal and I didn't set a stretch goal. Roll forward about an hour and I realized that actually the workbook wasn't going to take me as long as I thought, and maybe I should plug in a stretch goal. And so in this particular co-working environment that I work in, this virtual co-working session, we do speaker sessions every other Pomodoro. And they asked me to do a speaker session because they said, well, to start with, you said you weren't sure you're going to hit your goal, and then all of a sudden you're speeding past it. What happened? And so they asked me really critical questions. One, when did I come up with the idea that I had to do a workbook? And I was like, oh, yesterday. And like, oh, so you're getting on it today? And I'm like, well, yes, because I kind of had some imaginary deadlines and I wanted to get it out of the way. So I had this idea to do a workbook, and then I set aside time when I was going to do it. After that, I did a little bit of research on other workbooks, but I try not to do too much because I don't want to feel like I'm copying. I didn't know how I wanted this workbook to look. To start with, I was obsessed about the sort of aesthetics of it rather than the content. So after I stopped thinking about the aesthetics, I was like, okay, what do I want? What do I want this workbook to achieve? And I was like, I had a goal. And then I sort of thought about it in a different way. Who do I want to use this workbook and what do I want them to achieve? And then it clicked. And so I ended up writing a whole list of questions that people who would be looking to use this workbook would be asking, and then answering those questions along with hints and tips and questions for them so they could also work through this particular problem that they were going to have. And this workbook was going to help them work through it and solve it, or at least give them answers and drill down a little bit better so they more fully understand what they were getting into with this particular topic, which is great. And then I had to go back again because I just had this whole list of questions, and then go back and write a little blurb to each question to explain why I'm asking the question, rather than just, here's a list of questions, answer my questions. It was a case of explaining the reasoning behind the question and what you would get out of answering the question. Then I had to go back and format it and make it look pretty and make it into a PDF and all of that good stuff. But I went from idea to iteration and almost completed it, to be honest with you, in 24 hours. And that was a workbook. And I've never really made too many workbooks before. I've done one, but that already sort of had a format and already had a framework for me to use. This is just me winging it. And the person who was interviewing me for the speaker told me something that I hadn't realized. He said, you just created this thing and you're talking about it's like no big deal. In fact, the thing you were more worried about was the formatting, but you just created this 20-odd page document for other people to use, and for you it was no big thing. So I went from an idea to an iteration fairly quickly. And this is something that people get bogged down with, because what happens is they have an idea, they research a lot, they research some more, get down 3 or 4 or 5 different rabbit holes because, the internet. And then they ask people advice, even though everyone is in a different situation. And then they kind of sort of start a thing. And by this time, 6 months has gone past. And that doesn't help anybody. You can't learn unless you fail, and you will fail by doing, or you will succeed by doing. So the idea is to go from idea to iteration as quickly as you can using the very bare minimum and basics. So instead of figuring out, I need X, Y, and Z to get stuff done and make it look pretty, just figure out what you need to get it done and then iterate it. Then you can learn, then you can change it, then you can do a 2.0 version. It's basically what happened with this podcast. I just did it. I had an idea, I cobbled it together, and I've learned stuff along the way. And maybe I should do an episode of what I've learned for podcasting for 2 years. Maybe I'll do that. So thank you for listening. That's how you can go from idea to iteration as quickly as feasibly possible. This is Janice from the Career Introvert. Thank you so much for listening. I'm helping people, and introverts to be specific, amplify their voices through podcasting, publishing, public speaking, and general personal branding. If you have any questions for me, please email me at janice@thecareerintrovert.com.